All right, everybody. Another tough road loss against another quad one opportunity for the resume. Falls by the wayside. Auburn loses 83-78 against Texas A&M in a weird, anger-inducing fashion. There were so many runs in this game. Auburn was down early. They were up double digits. They lost the lead. They took back the lead in the second half. This was a game Auburn was favored to lose by 3 or 4 points. But man, they played really well in a lot of areas. But they just can't seem to hold this A&M team down. The second straight time they've scored a ton of points against us, and lots to get into. My man Ben Young is here to help us cope with this latest defeat. Ben,
I don't like becoming the lost podcast guy, man. It's already
no.
hard being the graphics guy after a loss.
What'd you see out there?
This is so much more frustrating to me than a Tennessee game because you're right. We played really well. We played to our identity in so many respects, and we did some things that Bruce Pearl teams do really well. We got into some fast break opportunities. We were aggressive driving. We had so many fantastic cuts in this game. They weren't always finished well, particularly from Jalen. Jalen did most of his damage tonight from the outside, but we had so many guys that were cutting to the basket really well offensively, but it did leave us open with a little bit of transition defense. And, we just got into some foul trouble with our big guys, and they went at us in the paint to kind of end this game. They went at our strength, and were able to pull away late. And it's tough to watch because we played so well, and it feels like this even more than the Tennessee game was a really really huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, this is kind. I mean, on one hand, I really do feel like we're showing a lot of good things. And maybe this is just my respect for Buzz and A&M. I think they're a good team. I think they're going to be in the tournament. This is helping them move that direction. They're 9-2 in the league, and at some point, 9-2 in the league matters, even if your schedule is a little easier. They've only lost once at home. No, they haven't lost at home in SEC play actually. And despite all that, I think you and I texted before we were underdogs or whatever, but like we think we're a little better than them. I think we're a little better than them, and I think that showed.
I Yeah, I think we proved that tonight. Our starting five was better than their starting five for sure. A&M was kind of a two-man show. We were able to shut down Radford, which was huge. Radford, one of the best players in the SEC right now. He absolutely torched us for 30 points in the last game. We held him to 10. We forced 3 turnovers on him, which was absolutely huge. Our tenacious defense did a really good job. And, our starters abused that stat sheet. We got 6 points out of Zep Jasper tonight. Um, it's interesting. This is so contradictory to what we've seen from Auburn all year. Our bench was quiet,
Well,
but our,
it's
our
been
starting five, I think, was better than their starting five.
it's been happening for a while. The bench has not. They've been producing in certain ways. They fill their roles. They do a decent job. But it's been a long while since I felt like the bottom half of this roster was contributing offensively, and I think part of that's just SEC play. It's harder. The
Yeah.
level of competition's better, and you expect that. I don't expect our bench to be otherworldly, but I do think you've mentioned a lot Wendell coming off the bench last year. Even though he still was playing a lot of minutes, it still gave us this thing off the bench, and we kind of had that with Flanagan when Chris Moore was starting, which that's a whole separate thing. We can't start Chris Moore the way he's playing right now. Um,
No, no, we
but
cannot.
but we don't. I mean, and then Chance is not playing. Johan is basically not playing. So you're down to Trey, who's probably the best weapon, maybe out of this backup, and then
Yeah,
KD.
Trey had a bad night. He had a great night as a passing
I was
point
gonna
guard. He
say
finished with
he had some
three
good.
steals. Yeah, he had some great passes, a really fantastic assist. Um, Only 1 turnover, which is great, but no points. So like overall, it's hard to really say that he was a contributing factor in this game, which it turns out we're really going to need. And the stat that we just have to talk about, you never want to blame the refs, but we shot 14 free throws overall. We shot one in the first half, one singular free throw in the first half. A&M shot 39 free throws tonight. They got 31 of their points from the charity stripe. I don't care how you feel about laying a loss at the feet of the officials, but nearly a quarter of their points, more than a quarter of their points, came from the charity stripe, and we didn't even get to double digits from the free throw line. You have to acknowledge that as a factor.
Oh, there's no doubt. 38%, by the way, of their points came from the
Matt the stat guy, everybody.
quick
Matt the
math
stat
over
guy.
here on the iPhone. Um, so let me hang on. I forgot I haven't shared the screen yet. Let me pull this
That's
up
okay.
for
So,
everybody.
but we should talk too about how we had a good shooting night overall. We shot
Yeah,
almost 38% from three. We were 49% from the floor, which is huge for
yeah,
us. And again, all of our starters went off. We'll go down the line, but like this was a good effort by this team. Uh, but college basketball is a game of runs, and it just seemed like the guys in black and white tonight really inserted themselves in key moments to change the momentum of this game. And this is something that I think we talked about in our preseason podcast, and it's really been borne out. This team does not have a huge margin for error.
correct.
It only takes a couple of things not going our way for us to lose a game like this and lose a game like we did against Tennessee. It's encouraging to see that as we go through the season, this team is getting blown away less and less. We made a massive comeback in that second half against West Virginia. And since then, we've looked like a more complete basketball team, which is
Yeah.
great. The margin for error is razor thin.
It's so tight. I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of my key points. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about the free throws. We're going to talk more about the free throws. There's a huge disparity. It's a problem. If you've listened to this podcast last year and a half, I don't really get into that too much. But tonight, I was banging my hands against the floor. Like I was really upset. It just felt like one of those games where a lot of the 50-50 foul calls didn't go our way. There were a lot of really frustrating look, and I look at this on both sides. We didn't get to the line. Those 5 missed free throws must have haunted me in my sleep because that's all we missed. I thought we missed more than that. I thought we missed key free throws at key times. Wendell missed a front end of a 1-and-1.
Dylan missed the front end of a
Dylan
1-1.
airballed
Those
the
are both
front end
huge
of a one
moments.
and one. Wendell missed another one on an and one opportunity, and there were others, and then we just didn't get there a lot. You look down the list. We thought this team, we know this team struggles to shoot. You mentioned the percentages. Percentages were fine. We won turnovers. We rebounding felt really bad. We lost by 4 and only 2 on offensive rebounds, 13-11. We held our own okay. Now, if you watch the game, that was where A&M started to flex their muscle. And if I had other than the free throws, I thought we did a great job of team attacking rebounding against Tennessee, even though we got out rebounded by 8. I did not feel the same way tonight. I felt like Broome was in there by himself a lot. And I just didn't see a bunch of guards, our undersized guards, Jalen. I didn't see a bunch of guys. 4 rebounds isn't enough for Jalen Williams in 31. It's not. So if I had a bone to pick, that would be it, even though the statistics don't necessarily, bear that out.
Yeah, and we won some other categories that are usually huge for us. We won assists, which is
Yeah.
a big deal. We have finished with 16 assists and only 10 turnovers. That's a pretty good ratio for this team. The winning recipe seems to be just holding ourselves to 5, but that's pretty unrealistic overall. A&M had 12 assists and 12 turnovers. We were aggressive there. We finished with 10 steals to their 5.
Well,
We
let's talk about that. That's where we should start. So A&M got up like 5 early, but we went on like a 15-2 run, and really we were missing a lot of easy shots early. That was the only reason we were down. Everything looked really good. Our game plan looked good. And defensively, that A&M game, we could not stay in front of anybody. Well, for the first 10 to 15 minutes of that first half, man, we were building walls. We were staying in front of guys. We were making it tough on them. Our help defense was really good. A lot of swipes at the ball when somebody's driving past you. Everybody was very engaged. And we fed off that, and we got out and ran, and we scored. Everybody wants us to like be aggressive and push. You know how you be aggressive? You don't just play good defense and force poor percentages. You get steals, turnovers, and opportunities to get out off a rebound. So
Yeah, and this is obviously, again, it's not going to be a fantastic year for us overall, but that comes down to the coaching, and the scout understanding what kind of passing lanes they're trying to create when they're there on offense. That gives you that step to know, if I put my hand out here. You saw this a ton of guys not keeping their eye on their man, but sticking a hand back
right.
into a passing lane in anticipation of, I know there's somebody coming in this lane behind me. And if I can put a body in the way, that's going to help interrupt that rhythm. And
and
that
we
was
were
huge, especially in the first half.
and we were chasing guys off screens. We were getting Wendell was getting in passing. Everybody did a really good job of buying in. And again, you always say this, and I think this is smart. You look at what we did the first game to what we did the second game. The coaches made really good adjustments on how we were defending them. You mentioned Radford. Radford still found a way to kill us with some dagger shots late. He's a great player, but we made it harder on him. But here's the problem. And this is probably where I would say a lot of the conversation tonight comes. A lot of stuff went right, and I'm really glad we're playing well on the road in tough environments against good teams, and we're just barely coming up short. That's really hard for the players. I continue to worry that they're just at some point there becomes a breaking point. We haven't seen it. They came out with really good energy tonight off that Tennessee game, which was two and a half days ago. They did a really good job with this quick turnaround, and I wish they had gotten one of those because that would have felt like a huge win for this team, and they were close. But having said that, I was just so uncomfortable watching the second half of this game and really the end of the first half because it became a little more familiar as a Bruce Pearl Auburn fan of like how we were playing, but it just scared me the whole time because I'm like, I don't know. I just felt like the defense let up a little bit, or A&M completely changed what they were doing. I'm not smart enough to fully know that. It just didn't feel
Well,
like
we
that
did.
same identity was there. You know what I mean? It shifted on
Yeah,
that.
we got into we got into the zone a little bit too much, I think, in that second
Agreed.
half. And a
Agreed.
lot of that had to do with the foul trouble that we were in and the odd rotations that we put out there. We saw some amazing, like this is one of the things that I was begging for in our group chat. We've all been talking about KD and just kind of like how this team is going to organize itself and distribute the minutes well. We got my dream lineup tonight. At one point tonight, we had Wendell Green on the floor at the 2.
Yep.
Trey Donaldson was running point. You had Flanagan playing 3, Jalen at 4, Janai at 5. I think that is a fantastic look because now you have great ball handlers, pretty good shooters all over the floor. But one thing we've now seen 2 games in a row. First, because Dylan wasn't able to travel to Knoxville, and tonight because both Dylan and Janai were in serious foul trouble. We're not going to stretch. We're putting Johan at the 5.
Yep.
And I got to say, for about a 3-minute stretch between breaks that he was out there, I think we got some quality 5 minutes from Johan, at least defensively. Let me say that.
Maybe he got 2 fouls in 2 minutes. And that's all. I mean, he moved okay. He tried.
All right, so let me say this. I feel like his body positioning, he just looked so
Yeah.
much more comfortable with
Yeah.
where his defensive assignment was.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the fouling just because I think this game was officiated so strangely.
Well, and one of the ones, to be fair, the second one on him was a great example of what you're talking about. It was just trash. It was such a
Yeah,
bad.
there were so many times where our big men were straight up and down, in the space that they are allowed to have as a defender, and either the refs thought they were moving their feet, or the A&M guys got the lean in and didn't get a charge called for some reason. I don't know. So I don't want to put that on Johan. And again, the guy that they were sending at him a lot was Marble, their big, strong forward who's got a weight advantage against him. And he finished 4 for 9 from the line. So you know what? If Johan denies him an easy 2 and forces him to get it the hard way from the charity stripe, I'm fine with that. Particularly if you're going to keep your body in that position and just not give them an easy look at the basket.
Yeah, he did.
I think we did a really good job tonight of not giving them a ton of easy looks.
Yep.
Towards the end of the game, as we were starting to get a little bit gassed, I'm not seeing the minute breakdown here. There it is. Yeah, our starters played some brutal minutes tonight, and I think that was a huge part of kind of where we sort of collapsed down the stretch. Will Taylor hit some huge 3-pointers late. He obviously finished 8 of 9 from the line. 22 points overall. He was kind of he was their leading scorer tonight, and he was very much the straw that stirred the drink for them.
Well, how about this? I mean, just to build off that, Marble hit some huge ones late because he kept getting there and we kept fouling him. Outside of Marble, 27 of 30 at the line for the Aggies. That's where they won it. I mean, the refs called a lot, but you still got to go make them. And we had some key misses and they just kept draining them. And Jackson made a great point. I don't know if he was talking to me or on the podcast, who adjusts to the change. The changes are so frustrating with the refs, but A&M had the home advantage. The refs started calling things. And this is what I always tell people. When we're in a game where the refs aren't calling as much and you're tempted to, I I don't know, you're tempted to like be mad that they're not calling stuff. I just I've rarely seen the Bruce Pearl team that thrives when the refs get whistle happy. I just don't see it very often.
No, and you could tell a lot of times in the second half they were meant to be makeup calls. There were some fouls they called on us that were ticky tack and that sent us to the line for the first half of 1-on-1s. And
Yeah.
as they say, ball don't lie. And so we missed those, and we weren't able to add that second shot in. Um, and yeah, this seems to be a team where our veteran guys get stuck into the mold of how a game is going to go. And if I had a big gripe against them, because all of them do so well at understanding the scout and executing
Mm-hmm.
kind of what our game plan is going to be, it's that live action adjusting to how the game is looking on the floor, how the game's being called, the different looks that they're going to throw at you. That seems to be where we struggle. We're really prepared going in, particularly the last couple of games. We've started so hot and gotten the looks that we wanted and executed in a way that we needed to, and we're just not able to put together 40 good minutes of that, or the
Yeah.
majority of 40 good minutes.
Yeah, and that's hard to do. Obviously, all the coaches and teams in this league are going to adjust. They're going to see what you're doing and change, and that's what we're trying to do. I do want to give credit. All those veteran guys that you mentioned, the starters, thought they showed a lot of guts. There was a stretch where I think we were 8 of 9 from the field, and A&M was 9 of 11, and everybody's hitting shots, and it was very frustrating because I'm with this team, I think so much about stops defensively, and tonight finishing with a rebound after a stop, and it just every time we would score, and Wendell did a masterful job of keeping us in this game, and Jalen hit a bunch of shots, and Flanagan was good at times, and Broom was really good at times. It so those guys, I think they showed the value of the veteran presence on the road again. 2 tough road games, but it's just and I do want to dig down a little bit. This is why I think Ben and I are so mad. We watch a decent amount of college basketball, and these refs obviously are in it. They live it every day. I'm just still very confused why the game had to shift so drastically off of I mean, there was a little talking that was starting to happen on the court, which, by the way, like, welcome to college basketball in 2020. I mean, it happens literally every time down the floor, whether it's the too small or blowing a kiss. That Flanagan thing is the most that I'm sorry, that is just ridiculous. I don't even want to get into
Yeah, and we can say this because I thought the technical against Tennessee was pretty ridiculous too.
it was
Their backup center was more than halfway down the court and gave the too small gesture, which everybody knows is Janai's favorite thing to do after a good move.
right.
If you're going to dish it out, you should be able to take it a little bit. And I think our guys can. We
Yeah.
don't typically get like that's not something that gets us out of our game. What gets us out of our game is so many times driving inside, getting contact, and the refs suddenly then decide to swallow their whistle. But Alan Flanagan, he didn't even blow a kiss. Like you normally think if you're going to blow a kiss,
He said
you're going to do
something
the
to
Dylan Cardinal, bring a hand to your face. It was a lip pop that even on the replay, you're kind of like, what did they see? What were they looking at?
I just don't. And really, so that was like second half. First half, the whole game shifted on, a play where Wendell was frustrated. He tried to tie somebody up. There was some talking. KD was in the middle of it. They look at it. There was no foul. There was no anything. I don't even know why we go to the review booth to look at stuff like that. It's dumb. And then, the crowd who very lethargic. I have A&M friends who have said, like, man, I really hope we can start getting fans to these games. Their team is 8-2 in the league and they can't show up and make noise. And then the crowd gets into it. A&M was down 9 at that point, I believe. And it gave this rallying thing. And if you've watched Buzz Williams teams ever, they're always going to play. It's always going to be super physical. They want it that way. They want the whistles to blow. It reminds me of Frank Martin. It really does. It's like the new Frank Martin.
Yeah, and look, I'm obviously a little bitter because now we're on a skid against Buzz Williams, but if the referees want to insert themselves into the game in that way, insert yourself into the game. What's going on the sideline? Buzz Williams,
yeah,
is a third of the way onto the court so frequently that they actually gave him a sideline warning. It took him all the way into the end of the first half, but like that affects the game. That affects the spacing. That affects communication. There's a reason why you're not allowed to do that. And if you're going to get ticky tack with your technicals, keep the coaches in the box. it matters. Particularly, there was a moment where we had a fast break where one of the A&M guys was down, and Buzz Williams comes running into the middle of the court to call a timeout to get the game stopped for an injury timeout. And I don't know what game the referees were watching half the time. It was very confusing.
It really was. And unfortunately, the reason we struggle in that, I think, has a lot to do. You know, I still thought in the second half we did a decent job staying in front of their guards. But once their bigger guards realize, well, I can just barrel in and travel every time, and Wendell's literally with his arms up, backing away from and they're going to call it. And then Janai got one or two that he shouldn't have gotten. He should have been a little more disciplined. But you know how that works with bigs. You
Yep.
get one or two of those, and then you're going to get one that you deserve or that you don't deserve. And now all of a sudden you're at 4. And we had to start playing that game with like 13 minutes left, where Cardwell had 3 in the first half, and he had a weird one in the first half.
And let's talk too. Like we had some of that going the other way as well, where Wendell got matched up on one of their forwards, and it was a good mismatch for him. He wanted to try and pull up and shoot, and he saw overextending the hand, and it was a ghost foul.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Texas A&M player ever made contact with Wendell, but
Right.
he did that Steph Curry move where you swing through hard and go up into a shot,
Yeah.
and it looks like a foul, and that fooled the referees.
Yeah.
And that was in our favor. So that's just another example to me of I don't know what they were looking at or what they were trying to control in terms of the physicality of the game with the way that they were calling stuff.
And I'm trying to be reasonable because it's hard on the kids. It really is. I sound like an old person. It's hard on the kids. It's the way we were
We are old, Matt.
the way we were defending to start the game was built for not calling a lot. We were swiping, we were reaching, we were, helping. We were running through screens and getting around them, and it was great. And then when everything tightened up, it is obviously the players have to like change a little bit of that. Now, I still wasn't thrilled. I didn't like this. You mentioned the zone. I don't even want to get into it. I didn't like that at times. Thought we were in it too much. And I honestly, here's what's frustrating: margin for error. I'm going everywhere. Margin for error. You know what's bad for this team when look, I love Zep, pro Zep, completely whiffs out of bounds. A simple switch that we literally switch every motion on every defensive out of bounds. It's like what we do. He gives up a wide open layup. So that's not a big deal, right? It's just a basket. Okay. Well, how about Chris Moore when he was in the first half throwing one of the worst inbounds passes I've ever seen? Our
Terrible.
4 always throws it in. And now that's Chris Moore coming in. That led to a fast break the other way and made Bruce so mad. I think he might have called a timeout. Or there was a timeout right after that. He was livid. So these.
Oh yeah, Bruce was not feeling it on the sidelines tonight, in part because it was some of these small plays, the
Yes.
simple execution stuff where the margin for error seems to live for us. These
Yes.
moments. Let's talk about Chris Moore a little bit and some of these changes to our rotation, because I think there is some stuff that is working and some stuff that's not. I was a big fan of the way KD played tonight.
Yep.
I've been number one KD slanderer. 2 of 5 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3. You want to talk about not shooting us out of a game? He was very conservative with the way that he handled the ball.
Yep.
He had 1 turnover, but he had 3 rebounds and 2 assists.
Yep.
So we're back talking about that net positive. He led the bench with only 5 points, unfortunately. But normally, KD is a guy that's going to do a lot of damage at the foul line for us. And good grief, could he not buy a whistle tonight? He went inside so frequently, did his usual raise up thing, go in for tough shots, and there was contact, and the referees seemed to think that that was just okay because he was a smaller guy tonight.
Yeah. 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 I'm, and that's why I've pushed back. Now I'm with you. I loved. Trey was playing so well in the first half. I don't know if that was by design that we were going to do that tonight, no matter what, or if they just wanted to reward Trey for, hey, like he kicked butt. Like our run was with Trey on the floor for a lot of it in the first half. And they put Wendell in at the 2, and it led to a couple really good possessions and good looks. So tonight was kind of a good example to me of the middle ground between you and Jackson. Some of y'all's like, hey, like less KD, maybe do something different here. But we still, Zep and KD still played close to their normal minutes, and we still got to do a different look. So I kind of like
Yeah. And we had some head scratching moments from guys that have been a little bit more reliable of late. Leo Berman and Chris Moore. We've already talked about Chris a little bit. We can talk about him some more if you want. But overall, just a blank box score, 1 rebound, 1 turnover, 2 fouls, not great.
Well, and a
And
terrible
Leo,
inbounds pass. He's trying to throw it to Broom
yeah,
Cooper to the speed. It's just, and he's just hasn't been the same since his injury. And I don't know if that's just coincidence or what, but he's just not the same dude. He was really helping us first half of the year.
I think that's part of it. I also think it's getting him out of his usual position on the floor.
Sure.
He's having some physical mismatches now. He's a little bit heftier than Johan, but he doesn't have some of the length or the quickness. Um, I like being able to rotate Johan to the 5. I know everybody disagrees with me on this, but so much of what he was finishing his last year in high school doing was at that kind of 5 position,
Yeah.
putting himself to the basket. I think it's clear to me defensively that's where he's more comfortable when he
Mhm.
doesn't have to cover quite as much of the floor. But Lior tonight, I actually felt was an offensive liability for the first time in his career, in part because he didn't seem to know when to shoot it. Early on, he was looking really great. He was getting to a spot in the corner in his typical 3 rotation stuff of I'm going to be here. If they don't cover me, toss it to me late in the shot clock, and I'll put one up. 1 for 3 from 3 pointer, not great, but average, fine. The real problem was teams are starting to learn that you can let Lior penetrate and draw some help defense in, and he either because he's not really comfortable with it or because he doesn't have that green light from Bruce, he's not willing to put up to pull up and hit a mid-range shot. And I think that's a strength for him. And I think if we're going to continue to reward his play with these minutes offensively and get the ball to him on offense, he's got to be more comfortable doing that kind of pull up and rhythm and take those shots because he had some looks tonight that because that's not really his role to go out there and score 8 points a night. I think he passed on them. And we've either got to enable him to take those shots and really encourage him that, hey, if you're in that moment and you've got the matchup, we want you to be the one shooting the ball, or the minutes are going to have to shrink because he had a really, really rough turnover tonight. And a lot of his drives did more harm than good on our offense.
Yeah, it's really, I think you still see the pieces moving around a little bit. Like, does the Trey Wendell thing become a thing? Does Lior keep his minutes? If you take Lior's minutes, does Chris move back to backup 3 behind Flan? And then if that happens, does Johan go back to the 4, or do you keep him as a third center behind Cardwell? There's just, I'm glad we're still, looking for all options.
I want to know what you would think about this because we always talk about how on offense there's only one ball.
Yep.
And I do think we were a better team with Flanagan coming off the bench. I think if we're going to have Chris in the game, where he is at his best is as a defender. And when he's on the floor with that second unit, they're using him in that same role that Jalen is. Jalen's so great
Yeah.
at offering assists. We got another game with Jalen, 4 assists, second place on the team. He is an outstanding passer. He's got great vision, and he works really well in that full role in Bruce Pearl's offense. Chris Moore is just not as polished as Jalen, and we know that. And he's also missing a little bit of the size that Jalen has and the size that Johan has, frankly, to kind of see some of these passing lanes or be able to get the ball into our 5s when they're matched up 1-on-1. And I think that hurts us. And I think we were in a better position with um, Chris Moore starting and Flanagan coming off the bench.
Maybe, and it just feels like such a risk right now. You're right that the positions are incredibly different, and Chris has cross trained at those since he got to Auburn, so he's familiar with the 4. He just he hadn't played a ton either way.
No, and I mean it's clear he knows what to do. Like
Right.
mentally, his game is all there. The question has always just been execution.
Man, it's just with what Flanagan's done, he's been so much better, and even tonight, just putting up solid again within himself, like good number. Like that's a good game from Flanagan. I know it's not maybe all SEC like we had hoped, maybe, but it's good.
No,
So
like it's clear that Flanagan, it's hard to say because there have been some eruption moments from Jalen, particularly when you go back to early in the year. But since we've entered conference play, I think our 3 best players are Wendell Green, Janai Broom, and Alan Flanagan.
mm,
And Jalen is such an effective scorer. We obviously know what Janai can do. Another huge night from him, 18 points, 10 rebounds. Wendell, 20 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, filling the stat sheet, doing what Wendell Green does and what the point guard does in a Bruce Pearl offense. I just feel that having Flanagan there with the starting unit changes the overall flow of the minutes and flow of the game. And I would I think putting him back on the bench and having him come with that second unit just like it was clear Wendell was our best point guard last year, it's clear that our best small forward is Alan Flanagan. And having someone like that come off the bench in later rotations just forces the team to defend you differently as opposed to when he's out there with all five of our best players.
The only downside, I hear what you're saying, and I think if we limited the minutes break differential, like if but the only problem with that would be, or the only challenge would be, you start Chris Moore and you still only want to play him 8 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you're either going to play him for 2 minutes and then take him out and then bring him back in later, or you play him for like that first TV timeout and then you kind of like for Flanagan to be playing the same amount of minutes, he almost has to play the rest of the half, like both halves, if he didn't.
And honestly, athletically, I think he can do that. I think
He
he's
can
in
do
that
that, but
kind of
then you have
shape this year.
foul trouble and like it just creates some potential issues.
Right. But my personal opinion, just as a fan watching, is I think that is our solution to continuing to tweak.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that Bruce is doing a really fantastic job of continuing to evaluate things. I think he's rewarding these guys that are our five current starters in part because they're playing really well. They're doing their jobs exactly as we need them to do. Tonight was just a masterful performance from all five of them. You got everything that you needed from every single one of those guys. Wendell led us an assist. Janai had a double double. Jalen stuffed the stat sheet. Allen 3 of 3 from the line, just huge. 50% from the floor. Like, what more can you want as a scoring threat from your wing? We got 6 points out of Zep Jasper.
Yep.
That's just huge. He probably shot a few too many 3-pointers, but that was in part because they were leaving him open. And that's the role for our two guard, is to get to that wing spot, get to your look, and shoot those 3-pointers if nobody's going to cover you. So I don't know how those five guys can play a better game.
Again, offense wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
I think the offense was plenty good. Nice to see that after the Tennessee debacle. I think it really just, Tennessee is just special. I know we made them look probably more special than they are, but A&M's defense is good, and it was good to see Wendell, especially. Like, I guess we could talk about the last minute. We had a couple opportunities. I guess we were down 3 with 30. No, down 2. Down 2
Yeah,
with
just
30,
down 2.
38 seconds. We called timeout, which I always just laugh now because I'm like, oh boy, we called timeout. Now let's see what happens. And we just ran a simple 1-4 pick and pop with Jalen. And look, Jalen hit 3 threes tonight. He was pretty good in a lot of areas. I didn't think he rebounded well enough. And that's just one of those moments, right? Like, Wendell took a way out 3 that was it airball? I think it was airball.
I think so, yeah.
But Jalen had that action first. He had a look if he wanted it. He could have probed and gotten inside to that little post move. We could have thrown it, maybe gotten Janai involved a touch. And so that didn't go well. And Wendell had turned it over a possession before. And
that was really the killer.
Now we got away with that one because we got the ball back, but you miss an opportunity to get a shot up, right? Like that's the key.
Yeah.
So not a great last minute, but I do want to give Wendell credit because he really did carry us. And this is a tough, this is the kind of team we think Wendell would sometimes really struggle with, and he does really struggle with sometimes. And he did a really good job of staying within himself for most of this game. His 3 missed free throws for him is probably where he is really frustrated. And then the last few possessions, obviously.
And I think honestly, a lot of that had to do with how many minutes we played him.
Wendell's in such. He's 32. He plays that every night, just about.
Yeah, I mean, just like in terms of the stretches,
yeah.
In large part because I think we did see a reduction in KD's minutes down the stretch.
A little bit.
In part because I think it was clear he just wasn't going to get those foul calls. And Wendell did a really good job of picking his times to drive. As we've gone into conference play, it's been nice to see. I feel like Wendell is getting better offensively, whereas in the position that we were in last year, he was becoming a little bit of a detriment and a little bit scared out there on the floor because people knew to just trap.
Yeah.
And now I think we're a little bit better spaced as a scoring team. We have a few more scoring threats, particularly when our closers are out there on the floor. So people aren't as eager to trap him. And it allows them to find those space, find those good cutting lanes. Yeah, it's tough to watch him put in a really good effort again in a tough matchup.
Let me ask you this, because the numbers don't really say this, but from my vantage point watching, and I can't tell if this was just me biased because I was mad about the defense.
Yes.
Did it feel like did it feel like we went away? I was. Did we feel like we went away from our inside out game that we've been really established? I know we won points in the paint 38-32, which is pretty amazing with how many putbacks A&M had inside. Like that's where they got a lot of their inside points. Um I I felt like that in the game, but then when I look at these numbers, it's like, well, maybe we didn't. Maybe we did get inside a lot. I don't know.
No, again, you have to remember we went on some really impressive runs where we would stretch the lead to 7, 8, or 9, and a lot of that was that inside game. But the problem was the last about 6 minutes of this game, our centers were in foul trouble. They were both sitting on 4 fouls,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when A&M finally really decided to go to work. And the game was close enough that that was what wound up making the difference. Was it?
I just mean on
College basketball is a
offense.
game of streaks. No, you're right. College basketball is a game of streaks, and that was how the streak for the points in the paint went. I don't think we got enough down the stretch, and I don't know how much of that was us going away from that identity as much as it was just feeling like we're afraid to get these guys one more ticky tack foul on a charge or something else.
Well, and to be fair, Wendell was hitting shots, Jalen was hitting shots. I mean, we were hitting shots. So I guess that's probably a little revisionist history by me to wonder that. It just I don't know. There's just something about those last few minutes that just I get anxious. I don't know if other Auburn fans feel like this when we're just dribbling it out outside, and it's like I just sometimes I just want that high low Jalen at the elbow, Broom post touch. Sometimes I personally that might just be me, but
I think some of that had to do with the way A&M defended us. I think a
it
lot
is.
of teams know down the stretch, collapse the defense, keep guys close to the basket, let Auburn shoot.
Yeah, and
You know,
and
that's
and
the
the,
way the teams want to lose to us.
and the nice thing again, let's be encouraged. We shot 38% from three on the road. Um, like how many guys? I always look at this. 6 guys hit threes. I mean um that's a good sign for
It's
us if we
huge.
can hit some shots. And honestly, that's how did we overcome a 22-point free throw disparity? I mean, it was threes. We hit 3 more threes than them, and we were pretty efficient with it.
We
And
shot the ball 10 more times than they did.
because they kept getting fouled. That's the
Yeah.
sneaky part about that stat is like, well, those shots don't count when A&M's going to the line every freaking time. Um, but overall, like super frustrating. Can you imagine how these players feel? This is you go back. The Georgia game was close. On the road, the Memphis game was close. We were close in the end. The USC game was pretty close. Um, what close game has we won? We beat Florida. That was really close. That was down to the last second.
Yeah. And how we beat Florida down to the last second was we didn't have to make the play. We
Yeah,
had to stop them from making a play.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the mat system coming into effect again. Like when we find ourselves trailing in that last TV timeout, we are just not as good offensively as we are defensively. Um, and the Florida game is a perfect example of that, where they ran a really great play to get the ball into Castleton, but we're so confident in our overall defense that we switched Janai off and let Jalen defend Colin Castleton inside, and he forced a turnover late. And if we're in that position where someone is chasing us, we're such a better team because we believe so strongly in our defense. And I think that's that Bruce Pearl tenacity. And that was the tough part about tonight was there were times we had a chance to stretch it going away
Yes,
late, and
yes,
we just kept getting in foul trouble.
yes.
Um,
Both halves, we had
yeah,
chances. I felt to really kind of break it open and get a double-digit lead, and we've seen how hard those are to overcome if you can get there, especially with our defense. And we kind of, I just whether it was A&M adjusting well, or us being in foul trouble, or us not being as committed on that defensive end, A&M just got really comfortable on offense. And say what you want about the Tennessee game, that Tennessee team was never comfortable that entire
no.
game on offense.
And I
And
think a lot of that has to do with this phenomenon that I have noticed as an Auburn fan in all sports. Nobody's ever afraid of us.
mm,
Even when we're good, even when we're really good, everybody looks at us and it's like, oh, yeah, Auburn's really good. That's going to be a huge win for us when we can upset them. And there's a real hunger to beat us all the time in everywhere and in everything. But we had the situation where we're cooling off. We've not been looking great. We're about to fall out of the top 25, and Tennessee's got that big number 2 by their name. All the pressure is on them. And suddenly they don't care about beating us. They're afraid to lose.
yeah,
and that makes a huge difference. Whereas this A&M team, they're a team that's on the bubble right now, and this might be the win that gets them in the dance. It's looking like right now this is the win that's going to get them in that first round bye. A lot has to go wrong for A&M to fall out of the top four now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and they're trying to overcome. If you're confused about how that works, like they just had a really bad non-conference season where they didn't beat anybody good and they lost a bunch of games they shouldn't have. And they, despite the fact that they're 9-2 in the league, their metrics just aren't as good. Having said that, I saw this Justin Ferguson posted. 4 quad 1 opportunities. Last 4 we've had lost by 14 total points. So we're right there. We're right there in these games. And I said, kind of frame this for me, the second half of the conference schedule, 6 huge opportunities, right? At
Yeah.
Tennessee, at A&M, Alabama at home, Tennessee at home, Kentucky on the road, and at Bama.
And I think this is the confusing thing about trying to look at this team right now is week to week. It's so strange because there is a week where they look like, hey, you know, this could be a team that peaks at the Sweet 16. And then you have a game like tonight and you go, wow, it's going to be really exciting to win the NIT.
No, we're not there yet. I think people, again, our metrics got way better by losing to Tennessee, like because it's the best team we played all year numbers wise, and we played well.
Yeah.
And the thing about Ken Palm and Net and some of that is it is weighted by how close these games are. Like it does factor that in. So the fact that we did go on the road in Tennessee and lose by 3, the fact that we go to A&M and lose by 5, like those are going to not hurt us that bad. But the problem is we're getting to a point. Jackson sent in our message like, well, we're getting to the point where we got to beat Tennessee or Alabama at home. No, now
Well,
those
but
are
let's look at the last 5 games that we have coming up in February. We have Alabama at home, Missouri at home. We go to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. We get Ole Miss at home, and we go on the road to Kentucky. And from where I'm sitting, I really feel like we got to go 3-2 in those games.
here's how I'm looking at it. You're probably right. Here's how it looks to me. We're 0-2 in those 6 I mentioned. Okay, I thought 2 would be incredible. Personally, we've never won in Rupp in my life. A&M I knew was going to be tough. Tennessee and Alabama we know are good. So like 2 out of those 6, we're 0-2. We got 4 more shots at big wins that will elevate our resume. The other route is I think if we take care of business at home against Missouri, who's not as bad as you think, they're better than you think. Ole Miss at home and at Vandy, that gets us to 10-8 minimum in the SEC. And I think with our numbers, that's going to be enough. But what I don't want to do is be relying on winning all 3 of those games with no quality wins on Selection Sunday. So I guess that frames up like, obviously this Alabama game, college game day, number 3 Alabama, they're doing exactly what we did last year pretty much. And it's really annoying. But you know what we did last year is we swept Alabama. And this is one of those last things we have left on our schedule where this win covers a multitude of sins, Ben Young. If we can get this one on Saturday,
Bigly.
and it doesn't guarantee you the tournament, but it definitely puts you a lot closer. And it would rid us of these last 2 games of being so close and not coming away with it. And I will continue to reiterate, Bruce continues to prove why he's one of the better coaches. Because you're right, like you can argue the last 3 games we've played might be the best 3-game stretch we've played all year. It really might.
Particularly if you just look at that second half against West Virginia.
Well, I'm going Georgia, right? Georgia, Tennessee,
Yeah.
A&M. Like we're getting better. My fear, and I think everybody's fear, is like, how long can we keep it's like putting yourself out there and getting rejected like over and over and over again. And we keep getting close to that opportunity. We just can't get it. This Alabama game, you can't emphasize enough how big it would be for these players, for everybody who's going to be there. Please, Neville Arena, we need the magic. We need something spectacular to happen on Saturday.
We need it in a big way because the margin for error is real thin.
It is. Do you know if we're favored in the game? I wonder.
No, right now ESPN's got us listed 62%. So, not a terrible percentage. I'm trying to see if I can find the Vegas odds.
I'm a degenerate gambler. I will log in and check if I can.
There you go.
I'm
not seeing a point spread yet. I think they might be watching to see how Bama plays tomorrow night against Florida.
Could be. I'll have to look at that. Anyway, I would imagine we're a slight dog there, even at home. But yeah. So, any other thoughts on this game or kind of where we sit? We're what, 7-5?
7-4. I think 7-4.
Let's check. Live
Where are we
podcasting.
at in the standings?
Here come the standings if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah,
Seven
the
and four.
downside tonight is we're now officially behind Kentucky, so we're out of the top four. But Kentucky has a tough matchup
I was
against
gonna say
Arkansas that they're
they're playing
playing.
right now.
Yeah,
Arkansas's up at halftime by 1, so we'll see.
and they are
So,
in Rupp, so
yeah. Um, Either way, though, that race for the fourth spot is now really starting to heat up. I don't think any of us expect to hold on to that double bye necessarily. It would have been great if we. That's another big opportunity with the last two games with A&M and Tennessee. We could have really stayed in that hunt a little longer, maybe.
yeah, one of those two wins really stretches it for us. But right now, if Kentucky wins tonight, we're back by a full game.
Yep.
Florida
Fifth
and
place.
Alabama play tomorrow. If Florida somehow pulls off the upset, they're now tied with us for that 5 slot. Um, and if Arkansas beats Kentucky, which would technically be doing us a favor, Arkansas is breathing on our heels. They would now be one game back.
And so is Missouri, and so is Florida. So like it's really going to get lumped in there in that middle of the league, which I think is where most reasonable people thought we would end up. But it really stinks that we just haven't quite gotten that big win yet. And last year we were spoiled. We got so many big wins and exciting last minute wins, and you forget that the other side of that is like so much of college basketball is the 50-50 of coming. Can you win those games at the very end where it's free throw contest, or you don't turn it up? Can you do all those little things well? And we just haven't gotten over the hump. And I think you made a great point. That's why y'all should listen to this podcast. This team is built to defend a lead late. It's not necessarily built to overcome a deficit late, at least that we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's our strength. Our strength is our defense. And not playing teams that get to shoot 40 shots from the free throw line.
Yeah, keep that in mind. I know it's really frustrating. It's frustrating, but you're right. Like a lot of this, I don't like blaming it, and there's plenty we could have done better to make sure we come out with a win, but it is hard to overcome that kind of free throw disparity. And I think if you watch the game, I think A&M did a good job of attacking and taking advantage of it, but it felt like a very uneven whistle watching the game, and I don't think I've ever said that on the podcast.
If you watch along with us, you understand the MAT system pretty well now. We've got to figure out how we're gonna describe the Jackson system. That is about understanding how the game is being officiated and adjusting your playing style,
Right.
and who makes that change faster. Because tonight, hat tip to A&M, hat tip to Buzz Williams. He understood the way the game was being played. And late, when our bigs were in foul trouble, they went inside, 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 inside.
Yep.
And that was how they kept it close. That was how they won the game.
And again, I think a big part of that was, and you can say this is a detriment to Bruce and the small guard thing. Like A&M had more horses to get inside, draw contact, and pass all those things at the same time. Like Zepp can't do that. KD thinks he can, and sometimes he can. Wendell can a lot, but his size can still be a liability on getting those calls and getting rid of the ball safely sometimes. So tough loss, man. I really wanted to. Like I said, I think I said on the last episode, Tennessee we knew was going to be tough. This week and this 3-game stretch, like, can we get one? And now we're down to the big one. We still can get one. Man, I hope we can do it. Any preview thoughts on that? Have you watched much Alabama?
I've watched a few of their games, mostly the early season stuff before they really established the Brandon Miller identity. If there's one takeaway that I've had over the last few games, it's that we are figuring out how to defend these star guards.
Yeah.
And I think if we can establish Jalen and Janai inside early and make this game a tough physical inside matchup and not let them flex him into these easy 3-point looks from, his spot outside, I think we got a shot. This is going to be the first time in a while where we're going up against a team that I think across the board is more talented than we are, just based on what I've seen this year. Tennessee, obviously, as a team, plays really, really well, but I think they are more than the sum of their parts. Whereas I think Alabama individually, you could put any of their guys on any team in the SEC of their starting five, and they would be a pretty big star. So it's going to take all of our horses. It's going to take a really good scout, but with any luck, we're going to be playing real mad because we've had some close games that we deserve to win. And
you you hope the rivalry, the game day, the Pearlville, the everything that hopefully will happen this weekend. There's no obviously we're not going to come out flat. We're going to come out excited, ready to play. But I'm more concerned. Like I do worry about the confidence level a little bit because at some point when you keep losing close opportunities, you start to kind of second guess. And I do think we might have seen some of that the last few minutes of this game tonight. And somebody's going to have to kick the door down if we're going to beat Alabama. And to me, my only main preview, it starts with Jalen Williams. I think in this matchup, that is the four. He is going to have that assignment to guard Brandon Miller. Now, if you're Alabama, you're obviously going to try to get Jalen switched off and have Brandon Miller shoot over KD or Flanagan or whoever you can get matched up with him. But can Jalen not just defend him when he's got those opportunities, but can you match that position? Can you score? And
that's going to be the thing is I see this game starting off like a lot of our games have. I think we're going to get to that 5-minute mark in the first half, and this game could be 5-4.
Yeah,
I think it could be Bricktown. I think it could be a lot of defensive struggles, and it's going to be about who can stay patient, who believes in themselves, and who believes in their scout.
Yeah, I just tonight hurts me so bad because I loved what I was seeing the first until that stupid whistle. Until that, and then everything kind of shifted, and whether it's we got away from it or just didn't play as well, it looked so good. I just felt so good about the looks we were getting. I felt so good about the defense we were playing. And then for whatever reason, it just all went away and we come away empty-handed yet again. Man.
But it's a big one on Saturday, boys and girls.
Big
Tune
one.
in.
Let's yeah, absolutely. Look, if you're not watching, I have lost all respect. If you're an Auburn fan that's not going to watch games now because we're losing, like get over yourself. Like be around more than 2 years, please, because this is actually this kind of year we're having. This is what college basketball is. I worry that we're going to have a classic bubble NCAA tournament season this year, which we really haven't had with Bruce. We've always, when we've gotten in, it's been as a pretty high seed. Mm-hmm. This is what most of college basketball experiences on a yearly basis, and it is terrible because you just constantly aren't sure if your team's good. You think they're good, they have opportunities, and they don't win, and this is normal for a lot of programs. So I really just want to get in. I've been saying that for weeks. We're not in yet. I really want to get in.
And we can start on Saturday.
We win Saturday. That's a big – because you said the schedule, it gets a little easier for a little bit. Like if we can get Saturday, you start to – every game's different, but we have some opportunities the next few.
Yeah. But to get to 20.
The concern is what if Alabama comes in and beats us by 30 and – now you have to win these games. You have to beat Missouri at that point. Like it becomes a massive game to try to beat Missouri, and you've lost 4 out of 5. And do you start to see some, dissension in the team? And haven't really seen that yet. Look like the guys are still fighting together, playing together. But big one Saturday. We might need to do I don't know. Maybe we can do a special. I haven't talked to Jackson about this. We might have to do a little pregame or something because this is a huge game.
Get Jackson to come back on his own podcast. That's step one.
Shout out Jackson, wherever you are, working hard. You New Yorkers just burning the midnight oil.
That's right.
Anyway, any other thoughts, Ben?
That's it, man. War Eagle, Matt.
War Eagle, everybody. Keep fighting the good fight. Beat Bama.